Okay. Welcome to AL-MENA, a new generation bringing new areas of our fellowship together with unity. All of our speakers are shared on our WhatsApp audio groups and speaker channels. The links will be dropped in the chat. If you're listening to this recording and need help, we have a way out that works. Please reach out and send us an email at ca.almena2026@gmail.com, and the crew will reach out and get back to you. We have invited our speaker, Peter M., this evening from Boca Raton, Florida, to share a message of depth and weight on the topic of his experience, strength, and hope for 45 minutes. So when you're ready, Peter, the floor is yours. Please come on in.
All right. Well, thank you so much. My name is Peter, recovered alcoholic, and grateful to be alive and sober. Thank you for the invitation. Glad to be here. June 23rd, 1988 is when God separated me from alcohol. Very grateful for this gift of sobriety. I do have a sponsor. His name is Bob Bazans out of St. Paul, Minnesota. And my home group is in Boca Raton, Florida, where it's around 80 degrees and sunny right now. It's kind of nice. We meet Wednesday night at 7:30. It's a little big book study meeting. It's really a cool group. We start at 7:30 and 6 o'clock, the coffee's on, the lights are on, and it's a great fellowship. What I like to call the soul music before the meeting starts. It's just a great place to be. And when the meeting ends, no one runs to the parking lot. We need to get thrown out of there because it's kind of like last call. They start flicking the lights. It's just a cool place to be on a Wednesday. And I'm currently sponsoring over a dozen men. So between my wife, Marion, and myself, we're very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. She's speaking at a women's conference in Tennessee, and because of the weather, is already delayed 2 hours. So hopefully she'll get home in decent time. And I get to share about the good news that was brought to me. I'll tell you, my life in Alcoholics Anonymous, where I pretty much grew up, has changed over the years. I like to say evolved. I was chatting with my youngest brother earlier. We were talking about because the hockey team just won a U.S. hockey team just won another gold medal, and the last one was in 1980. And we were talking about 1980, and I realized in 1980 how lost I was in this journey of life. I didn't have a clue. And as we were talking, I was getting depressed by the minute to realize how clueless I was on how to do life. I had zero living skills. The only thing I knew how to do back then was just keep the drunk going, and that was it. And because it was in CA, I can tell you I had an addiction time with narcotics, did a bunch of coke, never liked coke. It was too fast, and I start saying things I don't want to say and waking up to people I don't remember going to bed with. It was a little weird. I thought she looked like Bo Derek when it started, and I would wake up next to Bo Diddley in the morning, and I wonder how the heck that happened. And I liked alcohol. I liked heroin. I liked eating pills because the more numb I can get to my surroundings, the better I was until oblivion. So, how my perception of how I look at life has changed a whole bunch. What God, little by slowly, has done for me over time is, as I've often said, close the ears to the mind and open up the ears to the soul, and get to operate out of the soul. And as it goes, I seek that which my soul loves, and that is God and being in contact with people. What I've come to experience is that the truth is true until I discover a new truth. And for me, it has been about relationships and Alcoholics Anonymous. This has been with me a number of years. That the journey in AA or CA or NA, any kind of spiritual walk, it is about relationships, cleaning up wreckage of the past and having healthy relationships now. I am in a place where it really, really is painful when I'm harboring resentments towards someone. It is incredibly painful for me right now if someone name happens to come up in a conversation and I get tight. I can feel the tension. Or perhaps when John or Mary walks in the room and I get that feeling, that tightness, oh no, there they are, and I don't like them. I really can't afford to do that. And so part of my journey has been to clean that up. Whether it's through prayer or an amends or just offering an olive branch, whatever it might be, because I can't afford that kind of plaque on the soul. Earlier in your reading, you said something like to use is to die, or something along those lines. And in the AA Big Book says to drink is to die. And I had a sponsor presented me with something once that most likely you won't die right away, but perhaps linger out there with daily humiliations and degradations for years before you succumb to alcoholism. And that really got my attention. So it's about cleaning up relationships and having good relationships, starting with God. I mean, what does my relationship God with God look like? Do I have a relationship with God? Do I believe in a God? Who am I praying to? What does that look like in the morning? Or have I gotten so far away from step one that I don't really need to pray that regular or dedicate and devote myself to my God and to my fellowship? I fall prey to comfort and what makes me feel good. And I start to chase comfort and good feelings, which will usually take me away from the power which is keeping me sober all along. So I need to take a look at things like that. The other piece is this journey of being sober. It's so easy to take it for granted, and the belief system that my mind provides me with is I got it. I know what I need to do. Failing to realize that the same mind that keeps filling the hole is the same mind that keeps digging the hole, and it's a trickster. That my sobriety really hangs by a thread because of a thinking mind, which is a four-letter word. My mind wants no part of God, recovery, step work, prayer, meditation, nothing. And it'll do everything it can to drive a wedge between me and you. And I need to be really aware of that. I can't stay healthy and with a full belly on what I ate yesterday. I need to eat today. And it's the same thing with spirituality. What I took in yesterday, it needs to be renewed today. And if God gives me tomorrow, I need to do it all over again. So it's constantly growing along this path. If not, I have found because I hit these spots that I start to get consumed with me and my plans and designs and my journey as to where I'm supposed to be, where I'm supposed to be going, who ought to be in my life, what it's supposed to feel like. And that's the journey that takes me away from God. And I start to become restless, irritable, and discontented. I got a good case of the RIDS. And my aliveness starts to die. So the freedom today I seek is no longer for me, but from me. The further I get away from me, the better. I picked up a drink at 14 years old. I'm from New York, a place called Brooklyn, New York. And where I grew up in this town in New York, it wasn't in the city. I was about an hour from Manhattan. It was like a town where I grew up was a small town. It isn't that way any longer, but it was a pretty cool place to be. I remember the late 60s, early 70s, before disco and MTV ruined everything. We had rock and roll and Motown. It was a pretty good time. And what we did back in my neighborhood was in the summertime, especially when there was no school, everyone would hang out on street corners and schoolyards and drink beer and listen to music. It was so cool. I remember one end of the dial you had like the Temptation, the Four Tops, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, and the other side you had the Doors, the Beatles, and the Rolling Stones. And now we got Taylor Swift. So I don't know what the hell's going on out there, but it was just a cool time. And the older guys, the men, the worldly men who were around 17 years old, our job as youngins was to work ourselves up to the older crew. And that was really important. Everyone wanted to be a gangster where I grew up. And I remember my first drunk. It was a Saturday night, and I picked up a quart of Colt 45 beer, and I had never been drunk before. But I saw drunk in other people, and it seemed to be a good place to be. I liked the effect that was being produced in them, and I wanted that in me. What was going on with me at around 14 was before my first drunk, about 6 months before, my mom took her life. My mom was an alcoholic and a narcotic. She was a user. She was addicted to pills and had some psych issues. And I can remember about a half a dozen attempts at suicide that she had and lost count of how many psych wards we brought her to. My dad took her to. And so I was the kid on the corner whose mom committed suicide. And that came with a lot of shame, to be quite frank. And there was a part of me that felt I could have done a better job as a son to help her not do that. My dad and I, although in sobriety we bonded, it was a great relationship. But growing up, it wasn't. It was awful. I was terribly afraid of my dad, and I was convinced he didn't like me, and we didn't get along. Uh, I was a musician growing up, a gifted one, and I wanted long hair. I wanted bell bottoms. I wanted hippie beads. I listened to rock and roll. And my dad, and I wanted to go to, I remember 1969, I was 10 years old. I wanted to go to Woodstock. And my dad thought I was a communist. I mean, he came from a completely different school. And so we didn't get along on a lot of, in a lot of areas. And around ages 8 to 10, I don't say this for shock value, it's just my story. There was a man who was molesting me. So when I show up to a street corner at 14 years old, I'm not okay. I presented well. I looked clean cut. I was taught manners. I could always articulate myself fairly well. But on the inside, I'm dying. And I'm only 14. So when I grab a quart of beer and I start to drink and I taste the honey for the first time, and halfway through a quart of beer, I'm feeling something I never experienced before. And our big book talks about a sense of ease and comfort that came at once by taking a few drinks, drinks I saw others taking with impunity. Why not I? And halfway through a quart of beer, I'm feeling pretty good about a lot of things. And by the time I finished a quart of beer, I'm drunk and I know I'm drunk. I can feel drunk. I'm in this warm cocoon. The world can't hurt because it hurt up until that point. It's problematic. It's unfair. I don't like it. I knew deep down in my soul, I don't have the skills to do this thing of life. I would hear guys on the corner talking about, their plans to go to college and careers, and one day I want to get married and raise children, and it scared the heck out of me because I knew other than making music, I can't do much else. And I had too many demons that were hidden, bad things that happened to me. But that night when I'm drunk, I don't have any of that. I feel pretty free. I don't realize, and this happened to me in sobriety, how much bondage I am in until I taste a little bit of freedom. And that night when I got drunk, I realized how much wrapped up I was, tied it in a Major League Baseball in bondage about everything. Get people's approval, make them think good of me, say good things about me, look good, sound good all the time. And that's a lot of holding my breath. And the next morning when I woke up, I wasn't in a police station. No one was looking for me. I had no black eyes. It was pretty cool. And I had that euphoric recall and I wanted to go do it again, and I did. And it was never the same. And I began to chase that elusive feeling into jail, many institutions, and knocked on death's door in 1988. In 1988, I was homeless, living on the streets of New York in an area called Alphabet City, the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which was a sordid spot back then. You had winos, junkies, and the crack scene was in full bloom. And it was just a bad place to be. And I took up residency in the back of an abandoned building, and I would panhandle and steal and like that. Uh, Around 18 or 19, Bill says his drinking assumed more serious proportions. So did mine. I get into my first treatment center. I've been through seven of those places. My dad dragged me to my first treatment center. He had put a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together, which means I wasn't showing up for life anymore. I was angry and depressed most of the time. I was belligerent. I was selfish, self centered, self seeking. I was jealous. I was envious. I was rageful. And I was drunk. I became a thief and I started stealing from my family. And when I forged a bunch of checks out of my dad's checking book, and he got something in the mail called a checking statement, realized what I was doing, he dragged me off to my first treatment center. Now, I hadn't conceded to my innermost self I'm an alcoholic. My mom committed suicide. I was molested by some guy. My dad hates me. I don't like him. You drink too. And in my first treatment center, I did this 28-day spin dry and got out and was drunk in an hour. And I made my second, I made my third, I made my fourth, and I made my fifth treatment center. See, nowadays, in order for me to really touch what's outside of me, to hear clearly, to see clearly, my level of discernment, if you will, could be on a, has to be on a spiritual level. I first have to touch the power which is inside of me, and I was far from that. The only relief I experienced was by drinking and now taking drugs. I got in by the time I got into my first treatment center, I was doing cocaine, I was smoking weed, and I'm into pills, and I snorted my first bag of dope. And that all gave me relief. And when I was away from it, I felt back in bondage and life was coming at me like a tsunami. And I got into my second, third, fourth, and fifth treatment center. All five treatment centers, I was drunk within an hour. Going into my fifth treatment center, I know I'm an alcoholic and I got track marks on my arm to tell me I'm an addict. I know that. I know what I am. And I would waver, I'm going to turn over a new leaf and stop this, to be followed by, well, maybe just I'll moderate and regulate. And I went into my fifth treatment center and I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. I had an abscess on my arm. I'm underweight. I looked the part of a dying alcoholic. And they said 28 days in this facility is not going to work for you. And so what they did, they kept me in this treatment center for 9 consecutive weeks. Now, back in the day, that was unheard of unless you had mental health issues. But in the controlled substance center, it was a 28, 30-day model, and out the door you went. And so I was in there for 9 weeks. Now, you know your life's not going well, at least I did. When your side of the door does not have a doorknob, that's not a good sign things are going well. And that's the kind of center I was in. And they would cart the meals in and cart them out, and all these groups we would do, and they'd medicate you. And H and I would come in and bring meetings in. And I'll tell you how serious I was about recovery. There was a show called Miami Vice back in the day, and my higher power was Don Johnson. And I wanted to be Don Johnson. And Miami Vice would be on Friday nights at 9 o'clock. And H and I would bring their meetings in at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, which I thought was a huge inconvenience because AAs and NAs and CAs, we like to talk after the meeting and fellowship, which I thought was really annoying. And so I wrote on the big chalkboard, Miami Vice, 9 p.m. speakers, please leave promptly so I can watch my higher power, Don Johnson. And so after 9 weeks of being in this treatment center, I'm doing physical fitness, I'm doing group, I'm doing individuals, I'm doing all my writing assignments, and I'm eating, and I'm bathing, and I'm shaving, and I'm washing my clothes, and I started to look relatively human. And they discharged me on a Saturday morning. I'll never forget this. And when I crossed the threshold out into the street, I realized I have a big plastic bag with some clothes in it, and that's all I own. I have lint in my pocket. I have no money. There were no cell phones. There was no plastic. I didn't have a girlfriend. I didn't have a job, and my family locked doors on me. And I'm about 3 hours maybe longer, further distance from my dad's house, and I don't know what to do. So you call home collect. For anyone who's a newcomer, like under 30 years old, there were pay phones on the streets and used to go and drop money in there and you'd call people. We didn't have cell phones back then. And so I called my dad collect and explained my predicament to him. And he said, just get in a cab, come back to my house. I'll settle with the cab driver when he gets here and we'll figure out your life. And when I finally arrived at my dad's house, my two younger brothers, who at one time idolized me, were standing in the kitchen. When I walked in, my middle brother said to my younger brother, "What's he doing here? He's going to ruin everything." And it was a sober slap in the face to me, to be honest with you. They were doing fine without me around. And they were nervous that I was home because I was a thief. I'd steal and I'd wreak havoc. Now, I wasn't a guy who carried weapons, and I'm not a tough guy, wasn't a fighter, but alcoholism levels anything in its way. And I stayed at my dad's house for 2 days, and I was crawling out of my skin. I was a bundle of nerves. I have no direction. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, and my mind is telling me we need a drink, a pill, a bump, just something to take the edge off because life is moving awfully fast. I was in a cocoon called treatment for 9 weeks. It was warm and fuzzy. Now I'm out in the real world. Most people don't care. They got a lot of things going on and it's too fast and too loud. Yeah. I, 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 I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't relax. I couldn't even carry on a conversation because the mind is screaming at me. Now, this mind, which is a four-letter word, is where all my problems come from. When I'm anxious, when I'm fearful, when I'm resentful, when I'm regretful, when I lead with paranoia, when I live in the wreckage of the future, when I'm disturbed, when I'm uncomfortable, when I'm insecure, it goes on and on and on. It's coming from one place and one place only. And that place is not the outside world. It's coming from me and how I'm interpreting it. It is my mind, the greatest predator to hit the planet. And part of that mind tells me a drink would work right now really well. The most insane thing I'll ever do in my life is from a place called sober, and that's pick up another drink and not be able to stop it. The obsession to drink got so loud for me that it began to feel physical. Yeah. See, my alcoholism does not come in a bottle of whiskey. My alcoholism sits up here in the head, and I can suffer from full-blown alcoholism without ever drinking. It's on page 52 called the bedevilments. It's untreated alcoholism, which means I have current agnosticism, which means I have a lot of fear, which means I go into self-reliance, and down the rabbit hole I go. And I can make all the meetings I want. It isn't going to remedy that spiritual thing that's going on. What I need is God now. But I don't know how to get there. And I have a lot of resentment towards God at that time in my life. I'm looking for alternatives, an easier, softer way, which meant pour me a double and we'll figure it out later. That was my solution to everything. Even though while I was drinking, I know at some point it's going to get bad. So as an alcoholic or an addict, I will pay any price tomorrow to seek comfort right now. I'll figure it out later. I'll worry about it later. Right now, I need to get away from wherever I'm feeling or wherever I am. I snuck out of my dad's house early, early Monday morning. It was maybe 3 or 4 in the morning. And I took a car that didn't belong to me. And I went to another part of town in Brooklyn. And I waited for this liquor store that I used to frequent to open up. And I'm sitting in the car. My game plan was to get a pint of whiskey, drink, take the edge off, ditch the car, and sneak into my dad's house and chill for the rest of the day. It's a great, great plan. It was the ambush and the setup. And when I got there, it was still dark out. Nothing was open, including the liquor store. And I'm starting to get agitated and more nervous and more frustrated and more angry. I had to get out of the car and I'm pacing up and down on the sidewalk. Now, 9 weeks of being in the treatment center, folks, my body didn't need anything that was going to affect me from the neck up. My body was not going through withdrawal. It was fine. Once we're physically sober, I can't get any more physically sober. Yeah? And I'm pacing back and forth, waiting for the store to open so I can buy alcohol. And I start to feel like I'm physically ill, like I'm going through a withdrawal. My head is pounding, it's sweaty, my hands are clammy, the anxiety, my chest, my heart is pushing out of my chest, my belly's upset. Now I feel like I really need a drink, and I did not need a drink. The mind said, yeah, you do. And when the liquor store opened, I ran in there and got a pint of whiskey. I didn't make it to the car. I drank outside on the street corner. And when I finished the pint, I felt wonderful because that's what it's supposed to do. It's a sedative. And for me, that always worked. The problem, I'm an alcoholic and I have something called an allergy, which means I crave more. I get stuck in more. Any crackhead out here, if you take a rock and smoke it, you can't save the rest for Christmas. It's not happening. If you get an 8 ball of Coke, I'm going to do 2 lines, feel nice, and I'll tuck the rest of my top drawer and save it for a special occasion. That's not happening. I'm snorting kitty litter by midnight. It doesn't make a difference. So when I finished a pint of whiskey, I had to go get a second pint of whiskey. I needed another pint of whiskey. It's unbelievable how the first one hollers and the second one screams louder. Now I'm in. And whether it's figuratively or literally, I'm glued to a bar stool. And I got to get here and I got to do this and I got to get here and I got to do this, but just one more and I'll get to it until you say, you know what, the heck with it, I'll do it tomorrow. And life goes by and years go by. In Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, whatever A you belong to, I can be sober and get so enmeshed in life and trying to make the money, try to get the relationship, all these things, and I'm still watching life go by because I'm just checking boxes and I'm not really doing life. I'm not stopping for a moment and counting my blessings, but I count a lot of your blessings and it makes me quite envious and jealous and angry. And so I wind up going on one of the worst drunks ever. I had a really bad time. I didn't return to the narcotics, but it was pills and booze, and I could not, guys, I could not get away. And I landed in my sixth treatment center. And then it hit me. Reality hit me because up until that point, quite frankly, um, thinking about my life and my family was a passing thought. I had sunk so low. And I hated everyone and everything. And suddenly, in the sixth treatment center, the detoxes now were getting beyond painful. You know, it wasn't like the first time in treatment, you do detox and you're out. This was painful. If I live to be 100, I'll never be as old as the day I got to be sober in 1988. And I'm tore up from the floor up. And I still got the hepatitis C, which means I'm anemic, feeling like I'm anemic. I'm weak as can be, and I'm way underweight. And I started to think about my family. I burned all the bridges. I have no education. I have no job. I have no money. I'll never get out from under. It's unbelievable. Vision Future says we will tell you how we got out from under. Working with others says that. One of those chapters. And I'm feeling like I'm so far under I'll never get out. And what's the use of living anyway? And after 36 hours, I checked myself out of this treatment center against the pleadings of the counselors because there's no way I'm going to stay sober. And I found myself in some flea bag motel with somebody. She was a barmaid and was renting a room, and she took pity on me. She says, stay up there with me, sleep on the couch, whatever you want to do. You're going to get hurt out there on the streets. And that's what I did. And one night, she finished her bar shift and went into her room to crash out and left her purse on the floor on the rug. And I went into the purse to steal the money she made, and I discovered a whole bunch of Valium in a pill bottle and ate them. And I got back into bed and waited to die. That was my solution to my life, to my alcoholism. And I actually look forward to it, that all this pain of life was about to go away. I'm going to go to sleep and not wake up, and it's over. That was my solution. That's what the mind gave me. Wants me dead will settle for me drunk or high. And God interrupted my death. There were a series of circumstances, not very pretty, that followed. And I was back on the streets. Now I'm truly homeless, and I don't know how to do homeless. Like I said, I'm not like one of these tough guys, or I never carried weapons. I was walking with impending doom. I knew I was going to get arrested again and have to go to prison. I was going to get shot or stabbed, or something bad was going to happen to me. And so I found this abandoned building, and I went to the back of the hallway, and I would crash out there at night. Occasional crackhead or junkie or wino would show up. There was actually company as somebody to talk to, for a short time. But this was my existence. There was no bathing or eating a square meal. If From my first treatment center till my last one in 1988, if I wasn't in treatment or locked up, I was drunk, high, or both. I had 2 days of continuous sobriety after my fifth treatment center. That's it. I didn't have like 30 or 60 or 90 days and get exposed to this solution. Nothing. I was just wanted to stay as drunk and numb as I possibly could. What blows my mind is that in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm still kind of introverted, reserved, but I love going to meetings just to hear the sound of us. I love interacting with us. God puts me behind a podium a lot. It makes no sense coming from where I did. And I love being around people. It's just everything has changed for me. And my appreciation for my God and my fellowship and others is just changed. Um, June 23rd of 1988. It's unbelievable. My wife Marion talks about this all the time. The day before we get sober, we're drunk on a run. We're doing something really bad. And for some reason, 24 hours later, we begin a new life of sobriety. We couldn't see it coming. Nothing makes sense. And so on June 23rd of 88, I'm laying in the back of this abandoned building on the floor in this hallway, and I can't move anymore. I'm as weak as can be. I'm 130 pounds. I'm urinating blood. I got hepatitis C. I'm dying. And I knew I need to get out there to panhandle to get some money to get to a liquor store because I need a drink because I got the shakes. And then it changed. I got my first GOD, and it was a gift of desperation, where desperation finally screamed louder than the ego. And there was a vacuum created, an emptiness that was able to be filled up with God. And I was listening. God, at that point, lit the pilot light of this spiritual awakening. I didn't know it. It didn't feel like a gift. I didn't look like a gift, but the whole thing was a gift because it brought me to a place of being reasonable. I'm listening. And the very same God I despised and hated and blamed was the very same God, and just wailing this. I was weeping uncontrollably. I begged for mercy. Please take me from this. I don't want to die, were my exact words. I didn't have the ability to even wallow in my self pity at this point. There's nothing. And this is why well, some of us like to use the expression we was surrendered. I didn't have the ability to surrender. I couldn't even think so. I don't even know what surrender is. I don't know what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go. I don't want to die. And that was a shift in consciousness given to me, not from me. This is the great mercy and love of God. And quite frankly, if I was the mayor of a fellowship, I would ask, why don't we talk about God anymore? Or we talk lot less. We talk about a lot of things in our fellowships, but the God word seems to have gotten quiet. And in some places, we look like the world out there where God is a four-letter word. God's a bad word around the planet right now. Why, I don't know. And I hope it never makes our way into our fellowship, which is the solution. And I will never apologize for that. God could and would if he was sought. Our literature tells us that, but we use a lot of different words for God. He's got a name. It's called God. How come I don't say it? We call God higher power because it sounds politically correct. Give me a break. It's insulting. And so my dad was in a town called Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I'm in Lower Manhattan. It's a long way from me. And around 2 or 2:30 in the morning, how God works, my dad was awakened out of his sleep as he told the story for years. And something told him to go find me. We hadn't seen each other in a really long time. And he was getting dressed, and his wife woke up. She says, "Where are you going?" I need to find my son Peter. We don't know where he is. He said, "I know, but I'm going to go find him." He explained it as a feeling in his gut. That's how he described it. Later years, he knew it was God directing him. And he makes his way from this part of New Jersey to the Lower East Side of Manhattan and finds me standing on the corner later that day in the condition I was. I had construction boots, and the right boot was missing a front. My pants are bloodstained and soiled, and I'm dirty and sweaty, and the whole nine. And my dad got out of the car. When he got to me, I collapsed in his arms. My whole body went limp, and it was over. And at that point, we live life forward and understand that backwards. At that point, both of our roots were grasping new soil. Our relation was about to change in what appeared to be the worst moment in both of our lives. We never got along. And God used pain, as a touchstone of humility to bring us both together. And my dad held on to me and kept repeating, "I'm not going to lose my son to this," out loud. "I'm not going to lose my son to this." And I felt safe. As corny as this sounds, at 28 years old, I felt safe, like a little kid in this guy larger than life in my mind, him holding on to me. I felt safe for the first time in my entire life. I knew no one was going to hurt me anymore. And my dad, quite frankly, was larger than life in his heyday. Remember that movie Goodfellas that came out a bunch of years ago? That Robert De Niro character? That was my old man. To give you an idea what type of guy he was. And so he was the bulletproof vest you could wear. And off I went to my 7 treatment center. I'll tell you this, I'm almost on 45 minutes here. Um, I lost my dad, July will be 3 years. And when he held me up on that street corner, he put his arms under mine and was holding me, literally holding me up. And the last time I saw my dad, he was around 6 feet, 220, uh, big boy. And he was down to about 115 pounds and bedridden. And he knew his days were numbered. And I went to see him, and he was sitting in a wheelchair, which was humiliating for him. And he was tired and weak, and he asked me a question. He said, "Could you lift me out of this wheelchair?" He was skin and bones. He said, "I don't want to call the orderly. I'm embarrassed." So I leaned over to pick him up, and my hands and my arms went underneath his, the same way he had held me up in 1988. And there was a moment of clarity where I was right with the universe and I was right with my dad. And there were no blockages. There was no shame. I remember making a few jokes for a little levity so we didn't feel so uncomfortable. And I lifted him up and put my dad in bed and covered him with the blanket. I made a prayer and I gave him a kiss, and he was dozing off. And I figured I'd see him the next day, and I never saw him again. But because of the fellowship we belong to, and the God I pray to, and the 12 steps which have awakened my spirit, and in that given me a a new outlook on life, I was able to get right with him and not be gun shy and give my dad a little bit of grace and dignity in a very real difficult time for him. I remember a woman in my home group says, honey, she says, remember, your dad got you for about 35 years of sobriety this way, because that's how long I was sober at the time. And since I've been sober, I'll tell you this. When I first got sober, I thought I was going to be rich and famous and never have a problem, never have a resentment, no fears. Everything's going to be great. And it's been fabulous. I've been broke. I've been divorced. I've made some money. Lost a couple of jobs. And I'm currently a business owner. I have been for a number of years, which I can't believe it. I met my current wife a bunch of years ago, going to speak at a group anniversary. I was sponsoring a guy in a town called Bellingham, Washington. I was living in New Jersey. They flew me out there to speak, and I came home with the wife. So do service in AA. You'll meet the love of your life. It's incredible. And I met Marion, and we courted. We spoke by phone about a year. We got to know each other, and I went out there, and we'll be married April 9th, 3 years, which is 4 years, which is pretty cool. And I look at my life right now, where I am with my God. It's for me remarkable. I'm an active member in my Catholic Church. That came by way of Alcoholics Anonymous and going through the steps, specifically 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I had a lot of anger and contempt towards the church. And I'm not trying to break traditions, by the way. I'm just telling you a story. And I did 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Went back to sit with the priest and make amends for my slandering and gossip and my contempt prior to investigation. And part of the amends was, he says, can you come to Mass tomorrow morning? I was out to do that. I'll make it right. I will be here tomorrow morning. And the doors opened up on my life. How dark it was for me, and what a bit of a hypocrite I was, that I would talk about the grace of God but never went to his house because of some old unresolved nonsense. And when I cleaned that up, my level for discernment went up here, and I had to go back. And if I'm not on the road speaking on a weekend, in fact, I even go to church on if I can make a flight. But if I'm home, you'll find me at St. Ambrose Church right down the road from me on a Sunday. There's 3 places. I'll tell you this. There's 3 places that what recovery has done for me, that I am better and I'm most comfortable. That's when I'm with you folks. I'm better. I'm comfortable. Everything makes sense. I feel safe. When I go to church, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, and everything makes sense. And when I'm with my wife, I'm safe and comfortable, and everything makes sense. I don't need to pretend. It all makes sense. I've been overpaid in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'll get out of your hair. I'll just read this to you and I'll close. This was in a book that I study. And this is, for me, speaks so much about us. It says this: may I become at all times, both now and forever, a protector for those without protection, a guide for those who have lost their way, a ship for those with oceans to cross, a bridge for those with rivers to cross, a sanctuary for those in danger, a lamp for those without light, a place of refuge for those who lack shelter, and the servant to all in need. My name is Peter. I'm an alcoholic. That's all I got. Peace.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Pete.
Thanks, man. That was
Thank
fantastic.
you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
amazing.
Good stuff.
Really inspired me.
Absolutely brilliant, Peter. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Great share. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you so much. That was really powerful.
Thank
Wow.
God bless Peter and Marion too.
you.
Thank you.